Hi there everyone, this is Melstromus, the creator of Satisfactory Factories. Today I want to show you Alpha version 3. A lot of things have changed both visually and also under the hood for this update. It's been a massive update, and this is possibly the biggest update we've had in the entire planner's history so far. So today I want to cover some features, but first, underneath the video there's going to be a number of chapters that will show up under the YouTube video, as you've seen, I'm sure, in many videos. So if you're interested in very particular features, please do skip to each one of those. I'm going to talk in a fair amount of detail across all the features. So if you're only interested in a couple of things, do feel free to skip and chop and change and stuff like that. There's also links to the GitHub and the Discord of the video description as well. So I'll be referencing those throughout this video. So please do visit those links if you want to have a check of those out as well. So first of all, I'm going to cover generators. So generators have been added to the planner. A massive hole in the planner before was that you'd be able to generate, say for example, uranium fuel pellets. If I were to show you that exactly here, you were able to generate uranium fuel rods, but you weren't able to actually use them anywhere. So that left a big hole in the planner effectively, where those products were effectively just end products, whereas actually they did have further usage. So now you're able to generate or add generators in there and actually use up the uranium fuel rods, the Vixonium rods, plutonium rods, and across various other different generators as well. So for example, we can add fuel powered generators, and you've got your ionized fuel, liquid biofuels, etc, etc. Adding these in actually adds a requirement in the satisfaction. So you notice here now how we've got turbo fuel. So we can actually add this as a product, as you would normally for handling this kind of problem. It's to turbo heavy fuel, for example. Now, another nice thing about it as well now is that it's actually cataloguing all the power. So you've got 25,000 and 35,000, so my rough math should be 55,000 megawatts. So scroll right to the bottom here, you can actually see now that it's actually showing how much power that the factory is generating for the grid. This currently is just on a factory by factory basis. It doesn't show it on a plan-wide thing just yet. It will do though at some point in the near future. So you can actually see per factory how much it's generating, how much it's consuming, stuff like that, and eventually you'll see it plan-wide. Speaking of generation and production and consumption of things, the satisfaction section has been massively rejigged. So eagle-eyed viewers among you, or people that have used the site before, may have noticed that we used to have an export section just underneath satisfaction that has now been merged into satisfaction. So you can now see, if we go to a factory with exports, you can actually now see that it's just been merged into this section here. Even more eagle-eyed viewers among you might also notice that the export calculator has mysteriously vanished. I was never really happy with how it was laid out and how it was demonstrating and visualizing data. So I've removed it from this update for now, but it will be making a return. And the return, the form it'll come in is that when you press this button here, it'll open up a tray, and it'll open up all the statistics to do with calculating how long it'll take to send something on a train, for example, and how long that takes, and how many train cars you're going to need. Same with drones, same with trucks, same with tractors, basically all the transport methods. I didn't put it in this update because it's just computationally too complex and it just needs a complete rewrite. Another change about satisfaction they've added is the ability to show the math and breakdown of the value it creates. So with this, there's a toggle now to open up the breakdown math of each line and each factory item and why it comes with this figure. So before, we had no visualization of how it actually got up to the satisfaction figure, and actually sometimes it was just outright wrong. So this has been updated now, so it actually breaks it out into the production. So say, for example, you've got 800 plastic here. If we update this to 803, for example, it shows up there 803 with 3 excess now. You'll notice as well that 800 a minute is going to exports, and this is the math here. 320 plus 480 is 800. You can also see products that are being used internally. So you can sort of see here a crude oil, that we're importing crude oil from the raw resources pool, and we're using it internally to create the plastic. So you can sort of see also if we produce it internally, that would show up in production, and it would be internally consumed as well. And basically this is a way of showing the math and showing that the planner is actually doing the things correctly. But we've made it behind that toggle because it does use a lot of vertical space. So for example, with uranium power, that's got a lot of items. You can see here it's fairly logical and fairly sane, but as soon as you open up Satisfactory breakdowns, it uses a lot of vertical space. So I've added it behind that toggle just to basically be able to just save a bit of space. Next thing that we've added to the planner is tasks and notes. So you're now able to actually add tasks on a per factory level. This is a new task, for example, and it's a very dead simple thing. You can mark them as complete, you can uncheck them, you can also just delete them. You'll notice that when we've added this task now, it's actually added it as a little icon to the list here. So you can actually see at a glance how many tasks you've got open for across any of your factories, and if you've got any notes in them as well. And if you click any one of these here, it will just go straight to the notes section or straight to the task section, which is super convenient. One of our collaborators added this. You can see on our GitHub who did it and stuff like that. His Discord name is Will, if you want to have a chat with him on the Discord and thank him for this great feature. Another thing we've added is GameSync. So GameSync is a feature I've created that allows you to track when changes desync from reality in the game. So a problem I was having when I was creating this feature, before I created this feature, was I'd had a factory, I'd created to the specification of the planner, and then realize that it drops out of sync as soon as I change the planner. That doesn't really, it defeats the whole purpose of a planner where you constantly have to resync and recheck every single thing in the game to make sure it synchronizes with the planner. So what I've added now is a very simple and hopefully quite intuitive feature where you're able to just go to a factory, build it in game. Say you've got 12 assemblers, you've built these 12 assemblers, great. You're happy with it, you're happy with how it's made and how it looks and stuff like that. You can now mark it as synchronized. And what this means, if you hover over the tooltip, and this also explains it as well, is that when you've marked it as synchronized, if there's any changes to this factory that have been affected by the plan, you're notified that that's happened. So let me show you an example of how this will happen. So say, for example, circuit boards, we're happy we've just built it. We increase the demand for circuit boards by increasing, say, computers. So obviously computers have gone up by 10, that increases the circuit boards amount, so you press satisfy there. You notice how now that circuit boards is still in sync because you've not actually made any changes yet. So as soon as we press fix production here, it's going to knock the factory out of sync. Reason being is that you now have to have 4 more assemblers of circuit boards. So this now prompts the player to go into the game and synchronize the game to the plan. Once you've done that, you can then press out of sync with game and mark it as synced with game again. You notice how this is still red. The reason why it's still red is because there's various other changes that need to be affected as well. So we just need to fix the import for that, and obviously then go into oil processing and fix the production for that as well. Various things as it trickles down. But because we've done that and oil processing was already marked as in sync, we now have something to change. In the future, what I might do with this is denote the differences between the current state and the previous state and show a little summary of like, oh, you need to add however many more. I didn't actually take mental note of how many oil refineries there was. So I now have to actually go in game and count how many there is, but that won't take too long. But at least now I know that there's a change to make, whereas before you would have to be prompted yourself to then go and check it, whereas now at least you can actually be told there's something to change. But I do intend to make it so that it shows like the differences between what it was and what it is now. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is the changes to imports. Importing previously was a bit janky. I was never very happy with how it was created and how it was maintained and how the data worked and stuff like that. So imports now is a lot more contextual aware of a couple of things: your factory and the requirements upon it, your other factories and what they are able to export, whereas before, previously, it didn't really care what could be exported by other factories. It just is a part or a product that the factory had. That's it. That's all it cared about. And it also didn't really remove selections as you selected things. Now it works a lot better. So I've shown a very simple example here. So we've got uranium power. We've got plutonium processing that's going to take the uranium waste from the power plant I've just made. So we've actually got two possible outputs from uranium power. So we've actually got not only the uranium waste, but also the sulfuric acid, which is made as a byproduct, which again, this didn't work before, as a byproduct of creating and encasing uranium cells. So a good example is plastic, create heavy oil residue. So normally you would want to burn that as fuel, but you could optionally just export that as something else. You could totally do that. That is now possible, whereas before in the old imports it wasn't really working right well. I'm going to add sulfuric acid, and notice here how now you're still able to select uranium power, but now sulfuric acid has dropped off the options. In the version 2, it didn't do this. It just showed you sulfuric acid again. So you could actually create duplicates, which wasn't great. And it actually created really wonky math in the planner, which caused a few problems. So now it's much more aware of what's been selected and what you can actually be able to select in the first place. And this hopefully should make your planners a lot more consistent. If in your plan you're seeing numbers in the factory, that means that input is invalid, either because the factory has vanished or there's some other issue with the factory where the product's not exportable. For example, you could be importing a raw resource. It's assumed that the raw resources are sent to the site directly at the moment. So you can't really export raw resources from another factory currently. I do plan to possibly tweak this, but for now that is the assumption that you're just directly bringing in raw resources straight to the factory if it needs them. Otherwise, I think it's a lot more refined. If you do notice any bugs with this, please do let me know, because it is quite the change. I've written a lot of tests around it, but there could be very minor edge cases I've not thought of. In general, there's been various changes to how performance works under the hood. I can't really demonstrate these changes to you in a video, but basically I've changed the way that dependencies are generated. Before, every time you change something in a factory, the entire dependency tree was regenerated, despite the fact that there might not have actually been changed anywhere. I've gutted this logic and basically made it better, where if you adjust any imports, only the factories that get adjusted will be recalculated and their things sort of redone, whereas before it was doing every factory. So now, hopefully, that when you change things, it's a lot more responsive. Like this used to lag the hell out even with like 7 or 8 factories, and bigger plans it was even lower, even slower. It is still a minor amount of lag, but it's nowhere near the level it was as before. The bigger your plans get, the more this is going to lag currently. It's just the nature of all the calculations it's got to do. The team does plan to really fine-tune this, but it's going to come at a much, much later stage. I've made the decision that premature optimization is the root of all evil, so therefore any changes we do to try and make it better now would only have to be redone when we add more features. So the intention is before 1.0 release, there's going to be a performance pass, and hopefully we'll reduce the lag that you're getting in the plans. Typing in here, for example, used to lag the planner out a ton. That's no longer the case. It just does it. Notes, for example, as well, they're just independent. They don't change anything else in the planner, so they're actually really responsive. In general, it's fairly okay, but if you do notice any particular pain points with performance, do let me know. So I'd like to talk to you a bit more about what's coming next for the project. So I'm going to show you a sneak peek of what we're going to call plan statistics. So as it currently stands, the plan statistics is a very heavy work in progress. It doesn't really work well at all. But what I'm going to show you now is a sneak peek of what's to come. This is still very work in progress. It's not complete, but it's an expansion of what we're currently offering. So the intention, and what I'm going to do with raw resources myself, this is also going to change quite massively, is raw resources going to turn into a bit more of a table where we have each resource listed, how many is available, how many is being used, and hopefully the ability to add like how many miners you've got on each resource node. With that, it should give us the ability to show you guys how much raw resources you've got as like actively available. I am planning with the idea of making it so that you can have the option to add mines as factories. People have been asking me, hey, Maelstromus, it's really hard to understand exactly where my mines should be sending stuff, and that's an absolutely valid point. Currently, right now, it's assumed that whenever you import a raw resource, it's basically shipped directly to the factory. Whereas some people like to sort of aggregate their resources, their raw resources, into either distribution centers or storage centers, whatever you want to call them, and then off to different factories. That's fine, but it's currently not well represented in the planner. So we do plan to have a think on how to better handle that. I'm well aware that this, while setting up the initial stages, is great on the first or second tiers. Once you start getting into more tier 3, tier 4 territory, and tier 5 especially, it gets a bit complicated to try and distribute the raw resources. So there's like the fundamental layer missing. So we are having a hard to think about this and how we can make the planner better for this purpose. There's a lot of opinions on this topic, and there's a lot of ways we could do this. But for now, just rest assured, we are thinking about it, and we are going to duly consider it. Going back to the statistics planner though, so there's a couple other features that have been added to this. So this just gives a full building summary, a bit more contextual thing of all the buildings on the plan. Despite the fact that we've added power consumption generation, and it's not working in this obviously because this has been added before I did all this, we are going to add a breakdown of the consumption and generation of power on a per factory level as a sort of aggregate in this statistics planner. This should hopefully mean that you should have a pretty good guess on how much power you need to run your factory, or very near as damn it as I can make it. There will be, for consumption especially, there will be gaps where, for example, obviously a variety of buildings use power. We can probably mitigate it by saying how many train stations you've got and how many awesome sinks you've got, and maybe even how many trains you've got, because they also use power as well. But there's a lot of variables in that. So I'm probably going to say now it's never going to be fully accurate, but at least generation hopefully will be. And we do also plan to add alien power augmenters at some point, just not right now, because there's a lot of things to do overclocking and stuff related to that as well. Product service and deficits. Yes, so this basically just shows what's not being used in the plan and what's available for usage in a new factory, for example. We do plan to make this break it down a bit more, so it shows it by factory how much cable is available and stuff like that. But right now it's just not showing that. There is a button here that's showing all the factories and its summaries and all the buildings and stuff like that. Some might find this useful. It's quite a lot of information. We are looking at refining this a bit. This is still, as I say, very much a work in progress, and it's not being made by me, it's being made by someone else, so I'm trying not to be too critical here. But effectively, this is still a work in progress. By all means, if you're interested in what else we could add to this, please do let us know in the comments, or on Reddit, or on Discord. The next things I want to talk about, I can't really demonstrate on the site, but what we're doing in terms of plug in the holes in the plan. A priority for the plan at the moment is to make sure that it is statistically sound as much as possible, and that means making sure as well that syncing is represented as a first-class citizen in the UI. Right now, there's a massive assumption that anything that you're not using is sunk, and not all players work like that. So what we're going to do is make sure that explicitly in the UI you're able to define a product, for example, the plastic here, that you can mark this as being sunk, which then means it drops off being exportable, and it drops off. So this would normally typically be at the very end. For example, you add your AI, your space lift parts, your AI limiters, AI expansion servers, ballistic warp drives, all that stuff. Those would be your very, very end products. Right now in the plan, you can't sync them. So they would just exist, and that's it, and they wouldn't go anywhere. The next thing I'd like to talk about is overclocking on Somersloops. So I've promised quite publicly that this would be coming pretty soon. It is still coming, but the problem is with the overclocking and Somersloops is it's very, very nuanced and how we represent this in the UI. So with the ability to add power now, we've made a lot of changes under the hood to calculate how power is used and how power is generated. So we've got the foundations now to actually make overclocking happen, but it's a more graphical way of how we represent this in the UI. So currently right now, for example, you can actually make it happen by, say, you want to have 10 nuclear power plants, but you actually have 10 and then one at 50% clock, and that would be your 10.5 buildings. So you can technically do it, and with power, as far as I understand it, the overclocking works linearly, so that would actually be representative and accurate of 26,250 megawatts. But with production, it doesn't work like that. So for example, if we do 30.5, the quantities are correct, but the power isn't. So the power consumption is actually, I think, higher in this particular example than reality, because it works in a different way. It works in like 1.3 something logarithmic scale or something like that. So it is possible. We know the math to do it. It's just how we represent this in the UI. It's quite possible that the buildings way that these are represented are going to get changed so that you're able to specify however many buildings are at what particular clock settings and different groupings of them possibly, and the ability to add Somersloops to different buildings as well. So it is a bit of a graphical challenge on how to do this. There's a reason why we've not done it so far. Now that we're fairly happy with how buildings are represented in the planner, I think we're at the point now where we're going to start thinking about adding it in. So I'm not going to promise this, but hopefully soon we'll have overclocking and Somersloop support baked into the planner. The last thing I'd like to talk about is synchronization of tabs. So right now, when you're logged in as an account, you're able to synchronize your data. So the active tab that's open, if you didn't know, there's actually a new set of tabs now. So when you open the tab and change anything on it, it'll automatically synchronize that data to the back end, to the web server. Right now, it doesn't do that, and right now it only syncs the active tab. So as soon as you open a new tab and then make a data change, that data on the server has been removed. Now, thankfully, the data is still there locally, but if you move to another computer, it wouldn't move, or device, it wouldn't move with that on your account and the new device. It would only show the active tab. So I'm going to make a change quite simply so that all the tabs are synchronized. That should be coming fairly soon. And that is basically it for update 3. If you've got any feedback, please let us know on Discord or ideally on GitHub. The GitHub link can be found on our Discord server, but if you want to find it real quick, just search Satisfactory Factories and it should show up on GitHub itself. You'd have to make an account, but it's dead easy to make one. It's very simple to make one. And then if you go to issues and then press new issue and then write a description of your issue or bug or whatever you found or want to see changed in the planner, we can then prioritize it and make it happen. At the moment, as you can see, there's quite a lot of issues here. They will mostly get seen to or dismissed if they're not going to be really working on it. There is actually a thing here called high priority where you can see all the high priority issues that we're currently going to work on next. As you've noticed, some of the things I've just mentioned are on that list. Do let us know the feedback. Update 3 is a major change to the planner, especially when it comes to the calculation side of everything. So if you do notice any bugs, please do, like I can see right now there's 2 bugs there, please do report them and we'll get to fixing them. And that's pretty much it for update 3. So thank you all for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the new changes in the planner. As I said, if you've got any feedback or anything like that, please do let us know, and happy planning.